You are now tuned into Flippin' the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one and welcome all to episode 55 of Flippin' the Birds, presented by PSN Radio, where you can find all your favorite podcasts for all your favorite Philly teams. I'm Brian Cameron. He's Chris Infante. We're back after the very, very long live watch-along on Sunday. I don't know about you, but I was extremely exhausted.
I was tired.
I had to call out of work the next day just to get some type of rest, and then.
Well, I was off the next day just because my daughter had an appointment, but it helped out because I could sleep a little better. But it was long.
It was very long, right?
But it was fun. Hopefully we can do it again. Someone was like, "Hey, how about Xfinity one day?" Maybe I'll contact them. Be like, "Oh, yeah."
That would be nice. I mean, but the Xfinity crowd would be that would be a bit more draining. I'll be honest. I mean,
that would definitely have to find a room out there.
The Hoboken crowd was very gloomy after.
Yeah, that was. But if you guys are listening, shout out to you guys. Hopefully next time we do that, you interact with us a little more. We had one interaction where the guy was pissed off at me for saying DK Metcalf over JJ, and he said he didn't need to be reminded. But hopefully next time we can be a little more interactive, have some people on, talk to them and maybe interview. But it was good. We started inside, we ended outside. The Eagles started outside and ended up inside.
Yeah, that's something we gotta unfortunately talk about. And it's gonna be weird because well, just to get into it, I mean, Eagles, obviously, you're listening to this is probably either Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. Eagles did lose 27-17 to the Washington football team, but there's some good stuff to take away from it.
I didn't expect to start my drinking problem with the Eagles this early in the season.
It was very weird. I mean, you know what? It was prototypical Doug Peterson. Because Doug, he starts one way and then he always drifts.
It's so
far west.
I'm not going to agree with it with stereotypical Doug Peterson, because stereotypical Doug Peterson is have a shitty first half, make the adjustments, and have a great second half. That's been
like they fixed
Doug
the first
Peterson.
part, but they forgot about the second part.
In the preview episode, we said they need to start out fast, show out that these offensive cooks in the kitchen, and that's what they did. They had scored 10 points in the first quarter.
Phenomenal, man. He looked like Viral and you the entire game screaming tight end one. It was phenomenal. To see Dallas Goedert actually be healthy and athletic and going looking like Gronk everywhere. I mean, it was great.
The fact that they had 10 points in the first quarter. Mm-hmm. When was the last time we saw that?
It's been a very long time.
It's been a very long time. And then they oh my God.
They fell flat. But let's look at the positives real quick before we go to the second half. Something that you recognize right off the rip when we were together is the defense. It was about 2 or 3 3-and-outs back to back to back. They looked great. Darius Slay allowed only two receptions on Terry McLaurin for 30 yards. The defense is actually the number one ranked defense right now in yards allowed with only 239. I mean, they looked good. They looked terrible in the second half because they had to, play with such short field. I mean, it changes when the enemy's in your territory and you have such little room to play with, in my opinion.
The fact that they scored 27 points, I think 14 were off turnovers, and it was their longest drive, I believe, was 48 yards. Because everything was short field because the offense just kept doing awful things. And the defense held, yes, 27 points. Okay, that sucks. If you look at the box score, 27 points, how are you going to say the defense
But it was
great?
27 points off of turnovers.
Yeah, it was because the offense set these guys up,
Carson was playing for the wrong team that day. That's a problem.
It was rough. And to put it into perspective, again, I'm talking about these 10. I'm going back to the 10, the 10 first quarter points.
Okay.
Last year, it was done only 4 times.
Okay.
It was done against Dallas the second time, against Miami.
They lost the Miami game.
Yeah.
They won the Dallas game.
They won the Dallas game. Jets, they won.
Okay, 2 for 1.
And Detroit, they lost. So they went 2-2 last year, 10 points or more in the first quarter.
Okay.
2018, it only happened once. 14 points in the first quarter against the Giants Thursday Night Football.
Who was at the who's that quarterback?
Some guy named Carson Wentz.
Okay, so it was Wentz.
And 2017, it happened 4 times again against the Rams. We know how that game was for once.
Mm-hmm.
Against Denver, their 51-point debacle of the
That was such a phenomenal game.
Arizona,
that game too.
34-7. The Chargers, they won 26. So they won 4-0 in 2016. It happened twice. Both wins, both over the Giants. And then the Chip Kelly years, it happened once in 2015. It was a loss. It happened 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in 2014.
Oh, wow.
They were all wins. It happened twice in 2013. They were all wins as well. So the only times that the Eagles have ever really lost more than once in an era, in the Chip Kelly era, they lost 1 time.
Mm-hmm.
So far, in the Doug Peterson era, they've lost 3 times after scoring 10 points in the first quarter.
Which is odd because, Doug Peterson is labeled as this offensive creative genius.
Yeah.
And
then you add in Marty Mornhinweg and Rich Gangrello.
They have the arsenal right behind them. And what's crazy about it, so talking about the first half, they did well, right? Second quarter, they're starting to fall. Third quarter and fourth quarter, Carson Wentz didn't throw more than 90 passing yards in the second half. They didn't score at all in the second half. How does a team with weapons like this not score against a team like that, against Ronald Darby? And they showed that they could go deep with Jalen
Ronald Darby was
55-yard bomb.
Ronald Darby was so hyped. One of those plays that.
But for what though? Like, you got beat by Rager, you got beat by Ertz in the end zone. Like, come on, man, cut it off like your dreads, bro.
Like they just tried to establish the play action when there was no established run.
Which was odd because they grew obsessed with that for some reason.
Like, they just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And they were doing a lot under center when we've been accustomed to see this team at shotgun. Like, especially when you see a rush as dominant as the Redskins' defensive line was going. Why keep Wentz under center when they could pretty much just get right to Wentz so quickly under center because of how abysmal the line was going? Even Jason Kelce was getting pushed back. Like, no member of the line. Like, I shouted out Jason Peters for finally doing 100% of the snaps.
But he
was terrible. But
the best offensive lineman was
Nate. I would say it was Nate Herbig.
It was definitely Nate Herbig because I think he allowed the least amount of pressures.
Because today I said that Jason Peters' back's gonna be great. We're going to need Herbig to set up, and everybody's step up. And everybody's like, oh, Herbig wasn't even the worst. I know he wasn't the worst. He was very good, but we still need him to step up. Exactly. Like, it can't be one game. Now that he showed that he can do it, he needs to step up and continue to be consistent.
Absolutely.
Now he's going to be next to an all-pro on one side, an all-pro on the other. Make sure you can learn from them and use them. With Lane back, we're going to talk to someone in a minute. He can do that stuff on his own now. And now you can help out Kelce with Aaron Donald.
And the big thing that they miss as well is the running game. I mean, Ron Jaworski put out a stat. Carson Wentz dropped back on first down. When he drops back on first down a certain amount of times, his record's completely changed. 15 or more, he has, I think, like 2 wins. 21 or more, which he threw for 42 times. If he drops back on first down more than 21 times, the Eagles they don't have a win. So at this point, it's kind of like, this team is incomplete still.
Yeah.
How are they still incomplete?
But hopefully we have a completion of the defense, like we were saying before. It's definitely not complete, but we know one side is complete now. We know Slay is complete. We know NRC had a great game too. NRC is complete. Yes. Like, Avonte Maddox was balling out.
He was phenomenal.
He was balling out.
But do you feel like the Eagles miss Will Parks? Like, did you feel like they really miss his presence? Like, my opinion, I felt like something was missing, and it felt like it was the Will Parks addition.
We didn't need to miss Will Parks if Kayvon Wallace had a little bit more run. I think Kayvon Wallace only played like about 4 or 5 defensive snaps. Sean Bradley played 11. Davion Taylor did not play any. Sean Bradley registered his first tackle.
How many snaps did T.J. Edwards play?
Not many. I think only about 20.
Because it was Gary and
It was Gary and Riley. Like you saw how great TJ Edwards played last year, and we're reading all these reports that TJ Edwards is going to take the next step up and blah 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 blah.
It was
and he plays 20 snaps. Like we get that they play nickel more than base, but let Edwards be one of those nickel linebackers, and show like I get the Redskins running game wasn't great. They averaged 2.2 yards a carry, but still, like use him there to maybe plug up the holes that Peyton Barber was apparently using. He averaged 1.7 yards per carry and still had 2 touchdowns. Like we need a guy like that in the defense to help plug up those holes.
You need an actual linebacker back there. You don't need Gary. And I understand Gary led the team in tackles, but
what is Jim's fascination with nickel?
He has an obsession with nickel, and he has a very big obsession with certain players, and it shows.
He loves I'm convinced Gary has something on Schwartz.
It has to, because get that much. I think he played 100% of the snaps.
Like I'm gonna look up who is Nate Gary's wife or girlfriend or something. Like is it Schwartz's daughter or niece? Because
it has to be some type of relation there.
But yeah, like the defensive line was. Where's Fletcher Cox? First of all. Fletch, like for as much as we want to say we love the guy, like I'm convinced that he's gonna be like, I need a new deal maybe after the season.
And it's gonna be the wrong timing.
Because you see Chris Jones getting, you see Eric Armstead getting, DeForest Buckner, Kenny Clark, Aaron Donald. You see all these things, all these defensive tackles that you want to say you're better than. And next up is going to be Quinnen Williams, in a couple of years when he shows off that he's dominant, and you still got Ed Oliver in Buffalo. I know they're still a few years away, but you have all these defensive tackles that are ready to take the next step and take over in the conversation of being the second, third, fourth best defensive tackle in the league. Well, you can't say you are when you have episodes like you have of being non-existent.
And that's my question for you, because I think we've talked about this before, where I feel like Fletcher Cox, he's not as dominant as we need him to be or want him to be, because I feel like he's not fully invested in what he's doing. And that's not a knock, on his work ethic or anything of that sorts. But at the end of the day, if you're the anchor of the defensive line, I expect you to show out. I expect people to recognize that you are playing. Like Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald wrecked the defensive line.
Aaron Donald takes the next step every offseason, every game, to make sure he is an android.
Mm-hmm.
He makes sure that no one can block him. Like you saw the videos of him just throwing these Cowboys linemen to the side and just like nothing. A defensive tackle who wants to be in the same conversation of Aaron Donald, you need to make sure that offensive lines, account for where you are.
Absolutely.
Didn't look like the Washington football team's line really cared about Cox. It was Malik Jackson who had the most pressures. I think he had 4 pressures. Josh Sweat coming out party.
Yes.
We knew it was coming.
I love that.
2 pressures and a sack. He had the fastest sack according to Next Gen Stats by a defensive end. He got to the quarterback in 2.3 seconds.
And
Vince
he was
Williams,
the second highest graded defensive player this week.
Right, and 91.9. Vince Williams on Pittsburgh had the fastest at 2.26. That happened last night, but he's an inside linebacker, so they're used to blitzing. We give it to Josh Sweat a little bit because he had to work to get there. Not that Wentz didn't have to, but so the defense line, but now it took a hit because Brandon Graham's in concussion protocol. But I was told from a source that he's going to be okay. And this source talked to him, and then Vinny Curry's out for multiple weeks.
That's going to be a big miss.
Who knows what's going on with Derek Barnett? So so
many injuries.
I know the Eagles protected Joel Osman again for practice squad. The expectation there is that he's probably going to be called up for Sunday. Finally,
Tuhill's still on the roster, but he was inactive.
Tuhill is on the active roster. He was inactive, but we should expect him to be active unless they activate Sua Opeta. He was called up, and they just claimed Brown from the Bears practice squad. He was a right guard, so they have 2 more right guards on the roster, which now you're adding Pryor to Herbig to now Brown and Opeta. So they have 4 guards in the active roster. Who's going to be inactive? I would say Opeta's going to probably be inactive, or maybe probably Brown.
I think Opeta's still a little raw. I think Brown has a bit more experience.
Well, just to get with the blocking schemes and everything. Maybe Brown, because Brown's only been with the Falcons for I think a year or two. Before that, he was with the Rams.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if he's familiar with Scangarello's stuff, but because Scangarello was on the Falcons. But I think probably Brown and Opedo will probably be inactive because then you got Pryor, Herbig. The thing is, Peterson in his press conference said that Herbig is slated to still start, but then the depth chart comes out and it's Pryor.
At this point, you can never believe Doug Peterson.
So,
and I don't. It's not that I'm angry at him or I don't love Doug Peterson, but I love him as a coach. But at this point, you can never believe him. You can't trust him. Anything he says.
What I really want to know from Doug Peterson is why the hell does he keep saying week to week, day to day when they mean something else? If
it's not, like, come on, just be transparent.
I want to know why Lane Johnson waited till August to get his ankle surgery.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I was like, I mean, it was COVID related, maybe elective surgeries, you could. But apparently, elective surgeries came back in May. And
it was just a simple cleanup, but it was nothing.
So what's
severe.
going on there? It's every year. New director of medical training or whatever, new director of strength performance, new director of this, but it's the same issues. So how many times are they gonna rip off a Band-Aid and then put another Band-Aid on, and it's just a little bit less adhesive than the other Band-Aid, and it just keeps slipping off? But what's going on? Like, it's not being fixed internally. Like right now, there's a gash in the medical system of the Eagles. And they're just trying to put a Band-Aid over the gash instead of stitching it up and letting it heal. I don't get it. But
speaking of Band-Aid, let's rip off a FTB Band-Aid. You and I both declared last week that we were very fearful of one man, Ryan Kerrigan. We were called out for this. We were said that, hey, he only had coverage sacks. No, the fact of the matter is Ryan Kerrigan owns the Eagles when they have unskilled or unexperienced offensive linemen. He owned Vitae in 2016. He's owned them, I think 2017 he had a good game or so. Last year he didn't really show up at all, but this year he showed up. And he had help.
Ryan Kerrigan is a monster. He doesn't get the credit that he deserves.
He's nasty.
Now after in 18 games, let's say 17 games, because last year's game he was hurt really, and he didn't really do much. Last year's game in 2019, 1 tackle, 2 QB hits, that's it, and 58 snaps, so 78%. In this game, Sunday, he only played 22% of the snaps, 22 snaps, 32% of the snaps. He had 2 tackles, and both of them were for loss. 2 QB hits, 1 fumble recovery for 6 yards, and 2 sacks. So now in 18 games, with asterisks, really it's 17 games. So we'll take away the 1 tackle from last year and 2 QB hits. In 17 games, productive games, 13.5 sacks, 60 tackles, 22 QB hits. He has owned the Eagles. No matter who's blocking him. We want to say Lane Johnson, and then it's coverage. Okay, whatever. Sack's a sack. He's still doing it. And we said that from the beginning, and look what happened.
It's a fact. I mean, Kerrigan, and the scary part is that I understand later on in the year the Eagles may get healthy. They'll have the full offensive line outside of Brandon Brooks. But the fact of the matter is now Kerrigan has help. He has a very experienced Jonathan Allen. He has a very monster of a player in Chase Young. That front seven is definitely something we worry about going forward. It was unfortunate to see them really eat at the offensive line and to see Wentz as inaccurate as we did see him. I do believe that, his inaccuracy has something to do with, being skittish, because, if you're getting hit, in the back of my mind throughout the whole game, if I got sacked 5 times, at some point I'm looking at I got to get the ball in my hand. I don't know where to go. Let me just toss it before I get smacked. So 8 sacks in one game. I mean, of course, Wentz was
the guy, and I'm sure he's gonna reply to me because hopefully Lop Etta, your diehard Flippin the Birds fan, just to read it. He said, I don't know if these guys know what they're talking about. Lane Johnson flat owns Kerrigan. Most Kerrigan's sacks were coverage sacks. And I said, we kind of know, maybe a little bit. But I'm aware he owns him. But over his career against the Eagles, he performed very well. Not that he'll do the same thing this Sunday, but his resume against the team speaks for itself.
And he did the same thing this Sunday.
He said, and he put a link Fair enough. Also, please watch this. Lane Johnson totally swallowing Kerrigan all game. Kerrigan could not sniff once. Kerrigan is just a slightly above average player who gets a lot
But
of coverage
Lane
sacks.
Johnson
He is
wasn't
nothing
there, and
special.
we knew
Right.
he wasn't going to be there. So
Here's
why
the
is
kicker.
that comment relevant?
I didn't see this. I didn't see this till now. Someone
Okay.
else said Chase Young is scary though. Lop-Etta. Chase Young has not played a snap in the NFL.
You can't
Comment back. I know, but he's still scary.
Mm-hmm.
Lop-Etta. Nah, we got this. Narrator. We did not have this. It's
It was terrible. It was a wreck.
like kudos to him for being optimistic.
Absolutely.
I try to be very optimistic about things, but when you see the offensive line and you see what's coming, you have to be a realist and be like, probably not. And the next defensive line that's coming, at least we have Lane Johnson back.
We do, and hopefully we have a run game. Hopefully we have a Miles Sanders playing. I know Adam Kaplan mentioned as a grade 2 sprain on his hamstring, which is not ideal.
I did not hear that. Miles Sanders has a grade 2 hamstring strain.
I believe that's what Kaplan said. I
don't like to believe Kaplan. But if it's a grade 2, then he's probably out this week too.
It's a hamstring that's been bugging him since early training camp, and it's kept him out for majority of training camp. We need a run game.
Hey,
very desperately.
Wait, hold on. Let me use my daughter's. I heard my daughter's phone. Hey, Devontae Freeman. What are you doing? I know Josina's Alshon's girl, so
You mean Baldina?
Baldina, and shout out to Prince. Alshon's girl. So come on in. You guys can leak sources to her too. All right.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not join the club? I think the Eagles will benefit greatly if we sign Devontae Freeman. He's not at the level Miles Sanders is right now.
I love Boston Scott. I love Corey Clement, but they do not strike fear into. Maybe Devontae Freeman years ago did, and maybe he doesn't now. And you want to argue that, fine. And you want to say another injured player that comes in, fine. But Devontae Freeman knows how to move the chains.
Mm-hmm.
Since he's been in the league, he has the 14th most yards on runs 0 to 3 yards away from the sticks. I didn't look more into first down and 10 or whatever, but I looked at more of like a closer range if he could move the sticks. And he had the 9th most first downs converted since being drafted. So he knows where the chains are. He will get you those first downs.
And that's what we need because Clement and Scott couldn't do it.
Everything was going backwards.
They were bouncing back like pellets. It was terrible.
And Boston Scott almost cost me my fantasy matchup against you, but not thankfully, I hope that he gets better.
James Conner, what are the odds that he gets injured and I need him to win?
Sorry.
Fantasy's a mess, but you know what?
1-0.
Speaking of fantasy, let's talk about how you should improve your women's fantasy of you.
Listen, there's nothing I can do to improve my wife's fantasy of me. It's already improved to the greatest. But I'll pretend that – I hope she didn't hear me. Let's pretend that I need to. Manscaped.com. Landscaper. I'm telling you. It's like if you ever watch lawnmower to landscape you. Lawnmower, sorry.
That's the Chris edition of Landscaper.
Landscaper, whatever. Have you ever seen 40-Year-Old Virgin? You know how when he's on the table and they rip it off. Oh, Kelly Clarkson. That's what you can do with the Lawnmower 3.0, just without the pain.
Without the pain, yes.
Without the pain. I'm telling you, Lawnmower 3.0 gets a nice, smooth cut like you were having someone just pick your head like Brian does every night. Just pick your head nice and shiny. That's what you can do in Lawnmower 3.0. If that's not your thing, that's fine. Go get the ball deodorant.
Or the body wash.
Body wash. Rub it up, put it up in there, and no chafing. Foot deodorant. You got stank feet? Put it in your shoes, and that's it. It's done. Or the new grooming kit. Mm-hmm. They got everything you need. Everything you need. Promo code FTB. Flipping the birds for the balls.
And you get 20% off.
20% off.
And you might as well protect your buddies better than the offensive line protected Carson Wentz.
That's right. You got to protect your quarterback down there.
Speaking of protecting our quarterback, next week we are facing a heavy defensive line, and we do have somebody who covers the other defensive line on the call with us today. Chris, before we bring him in, you want to introduce him?
Right. So every week we try to have a member of the opposing teams media. So I went searching and searching and searching, and I came across BeyondTheHorns.com as a Rams blog that has a lot of writers, and they have their own podcast, Beyond the Horn, and they do great things. And I don't want to give too much credit because they are the enemy, but we're happy to be joined by Joe from Beyond the Horns for his insight onto why the Rams will lose to the Eagles.
Hey, Joe, what's going on?
What's up, guys?
How you doing, man?
All right, man.
Chilling, man. Am I supposed to be drinking? Is this I know it was
it's up to you. We encourage it. We don't want to. We don't like to be bad influences, but
I mean, you guys had a good week. We had a rough week, so we have an excuse.
There you go.
But speaking of week 2, Eagles Rams. Last 2 matchups, the Eagles have beaten the Rams, so we are 2-0 against
3-0.
Oh, 3-0. I'm sorry.
Come on,
week 3.
Yes.
You sure?
Yes. Not against McVay, against the Rams. The last few years.
No, but I'm talking about McVay.
We're 3-0 against Aaron Donald.
Okay, let's go with that. Let's go that route then.
DT wins. That's the big stat this year, right? Defensive tackle wins.
That's what we're adding this year.
That's all that matters right now.
Make sure it wins with a Z though.
Right.
So Joe, how you guys feeling after Sunday? I mean, you guys did beat the America's team. You guys did us a favor, so thank you for that.
Yeah. No, feeling good overall. I mean, it was a good performance. Obviously, the Cowboys are a much improved team, at least on paper. So I think a lot of Rams fans were expecting what's the right word here? A competitive game, and especially because so many people looked at the Rams offseason and were coming away a little less impressed, at least compared to what the Cowboys did. And so, I think coming off a 9-7 season, normally you'd be, excited about a winning season and looking to be competitive in an NFC that really has the door wide open. I say that as somebody who, the way you guys feel about the Cowboys is kind of the way we feel against the 49ers. So I don't know. I don't think the Super Bowl actually happened last year is what I'm saying. But aside from that, it's one of those things where, the door's open in the NFC and you want to see a good competition. I think it was a good game by both teams. I think the injuries for the Cowboys had a big effect, but I think in the end, it was one of those things where we got a lot of rejuvenated support for Sean McVay. It was a game where I know Mike McCarthy's first game in Dallas and is going to have to work through some kinks there that maybe he had worked out with the Packers. Mm-hmm. And obviously coming off of the Jason Garrett era, I think, Cowboys fans are ready to press fast forward on it. But it was a game where McVay and company, I thought, pretty heavily outcoached the guys on the Cowboys sideline. And I've seen that from a couple Cowboys outlets this week, which means if they're admitting it, then it's probably closer to true than being false.
Now you mentioned more support for Sean McVay. Has he been kind of been talked about on the outs maybe in the next year or two?
No, not at all. It's just more. I think the part of the problem is when you come in and do what he did. The Rams were coming off of 13 years without a winning record. Comes in, they go 11-5, win the NFC West. Year 2, you go 13-3, go to a Super Bowl. It almost worked against him that it created such high expectations, right? And the bar got set so high that when you go 9-7, it feels like a disappointment and missing out on the playoffs, right? But 9-7, just to have a winning record, if that's a disappointing season, there's not a lot of coaches in the NFL that have that kind of standard. And I think you just had a lot of Rams fans that felt that coming off of that Super Bowl that they were still going to be in contention and get back to the playoffs. And even if we got bounced at that point, I think it would have been more comfortable than just missing out on the playoffs. So no hot seat or anything like that by McVay. But I think Rams fans are eager to stay in the mix and want to make sure that we're back in the playoffs. And this game kind of felt like something that jived with that versus what happened when the Rams played the Cowboys week 15 last year, and it kind of felt like we were being pushed out of that window.
Completely understandable. Now, Joe, I have a bone to pick with you, and McVay's on my hot seat because in 2017, Sean McVay blatantly stole Coach of the Year from Doug Peterson. I'm very bitter about that. I'm still a little angry about it. That's why I drink so much now. Thanks to Sean McVay, and he's a little bit prettier than me, but he's
got better hair than you.
He actually has hair. I don't have hair.
Well, anybody has hair.
I have a better beard. Do not forget that. Okay, it looks good.
Can he even grow a beard? Can Sean McVay even grow a beard?
I don't know.
Well, he's got the mid-millennial kind of half beard, but it's kind of like yours, but it's very LA, where every single hair is down to the micrometer, perfectly coiffed, perfectly oiled. It's very Los Angeles, so he knows what he's doing in his market.
His shape ups probably cost $500.
It's perfect.
Wait, Joe, are you saying my beard's not perfectly oiled? Because
It's very Philly.
cool.
It's not very Los Angeles, all right?
Okay.
But it's on
Okay.
brand. You got it right.
All right, that's fine. I'll take that. But McVay versus Peterson. Peterson has, I don't want to say it, but I'm gonna say it. He has owned McVay, as as kind of the understudy kind of thing. But you guys do have two people who are kind of putting a little fear in my heart come Sunday, and mostly it's Cooper Kupp and Rob Woods, because they can go off at any point, especially Cooper Kupp, who's a phenomenal route runner, a phenomenal player to begin with, and I think he just signed an extension with you guys. What's your intel? Cooper Kupp and Rob Woods facing off against Darius Slay, Nickel Roby-Coleman, and our defense.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, both of those guys are perfect fits for the offense, and you saw that with Robert Woods last week. Neither of them physically are overwhelming. That's why Robert Woods, for his time at Buffalo, kind of had an underwhelming career coming out of USC, and Cooper Kupp is the kind of guy that's not going to test well at the combine. Even the kid that we just got out of Florida this year, Van Jefferson, had a really nice training camp. A lot of Rams fans are really excited about him, but the reason he fell all the way to 12th in the draft, the 12th wide receiver taken, is that he just doesn't test well. He doesn't have those measurables that jump off the page. But McVay's offense is so well crafted that you don't need guys like that to win at the point of the attack, to be the fastest, to be the biggest. He creates guys with so much space. If you guys look at the next gen stats, I think they had Woods was third and I think Coop was fifth in the NFL in week 1 for the amount of space that they created. The thing was, it wasn't them creating it. It was the offense, right? McVay was spreading them out and getting them in between the linebackers. And once Leighton Vander Esch went down, the Rams were able to find a lot of space across the middle. But it was a really unique game plan. It was a very, very condensed offense. We haven't seen that almost ever from McVay. Jared Goff threw the ball 31 times. 24 of those throws were 10 yards or shorter. He only threw the ball deep once all game. I mentioned next gen stats. If you look, they got a stat called intended air yards. It's how for every pass attempt, how far you throw the ball. And he had the lowest intended air yards in the NFL in week 1. So they were just passing very, very short. It was a really condensed offense. But because of Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, you can do that because they can find that space. They got good hands, disciplined, technical. They're not the guys that are going to take the top off the defense. We had guys like that in Sammy Watkins, Brandon Cooks. We don't really have a guy like that anymore. So I think we're, as Rams fans, we're comfortable with the depth chart, comfortable with the talent out there, but it requires a good game plan. We had one in week 1 and it worked really well. I think we want to make sure we keep up with that. I think the bigger concern more than the wide receivers is the offensive line. And I think that game plan helped mask that in week 1. We got to see how that looks moving forward.
I low-key have a man crush on Cooper Kupp. I just want to put that out there.
He's nice. I think everybody has a man crush on Coop.
The Cooper crush.
I love him, man.
We saw those reports that Cooper was working out with Wentz and all that. And it got our expectations. We're like, oh, it's going to be his Eagle. He's going to be an Eagle, and then
yeah. Of course, he's not an Eagle, right?
Yeah. It's like it's every name that comes across the wire. Like today, Allen Robinson is available. I hear the Eagles are a potential team. The Eagles are a potential team for every person.
Yeah.
No matter if there's $100 million over the salary cap or not. Which I don't want to remind myself of next year. But anyways, so not sure if you got to see like I told you in the DMs, just for everybody I slid right into Joe's DMs to try and get him on. It was very smooth, if I say so myself. I'm not sure if you saw much of the shit show that was the Eagles' offensive line.
Yeah.
That was Aaron Donald.
Which is the Aaron Rodgers of the defensive line. Okay, we put
licking his chops at this. Or Lane Johnson will be back. Jason Kelsey, and it was Brandon Brooks the last 2 times, and now it's not Brandon Brooks. It's Nate Herbig has owned Aaron Donald, but is he? We saw the pictures in the offseason of Aaron Donald. Someone took a chisel to his body and has just made him a Greek god. So what's going on? Like, how much health improved is Aaron Donald, and how scared should the Eagles' offensive line be?
Yeah, I think the bottom line, he's not really improved since year 2. I think he's that good, right? I think the biggest thing about Aaron Donald was he was so good so early on that it took the NFL a while to figure out, okay, how do you deal with somebody like this? He's not a traditional defensive tackle that's, 320, 330 yards, that's going to win with traditional power and just block up lanes. He's a defensive end in like a hybrid body, right? Where he's too big to be a defensive end, but he's too small to be a traditional defensive tackle. But he's as fast as a linebacker. You just don't have that skill set for a lot of guys in a body that is kind of a tweener body between a defensive tackle and defensive end. So ridiculous talent. There's nothing I could say that is going to educate people on Aaron Donald they haven't already seen or don't know, especially if you watch any of this game. He was taking Ezekiel Elliott like a wrestler on a choke slam. He bull rushed 2 guys at one point and threw them both into Dak. I mean, the highlights when you watch Aaron Donald are very, very silly. But, yeah, obviously the kind of pressure that Washington got against you guys. The weird thing is I think the pressure is more on the Rams. When you look at what Washington was able to do up front, the Rams don't have any excuses. And I know Lane Johnson's coming back. That's a huge get to have him back since you guys didn't have him last week. But it's not a talented linebacking group for the Rams. They got a lot of talent up front. Obviously, when you got Aaron Donald, it's going to make everybody around him look better. But that linebacking group doesn't have a ton of talent, both on the edge, where we're without Terrell Lewis, edge rusher that we took 3rd round out of Alabama, probably the most skilled guy that we got, and he's going to be gone for a little bit. Yeah, he's nice. But, you get a first-round talent in the 3rd round. Why? Because of injury concerns. What happens in the preseason? He's got an issue with his knee. Like, okay, yeah, we just did this with Todd Gurley, man. I thought we had paid the cost to the football gods for this, but okay, we'll do this again. So he's going to be gone for at least 3 games, probably more depending on what kind of complications came out of that. And then on the inside, you got Micah Kaiser, 5th-round guy in his 3rd year that hadn't really ever played. You got a couple other depth options. Kenny Young was the guy that we went with. We got him in the Marcus Peters trade from Baltimore last year, and he played okay, but that's another late-round guy, not overflowing with talent, not a real classic ILB that you want to put a lot of stock into. So I think there's going to be pressure on those guys to figure things out up front because of the success Washington had, and knowing that if you leave that middle open, and look, not every quarterback's Dak Prescott. He had a really good game, and he was kind of through the first half really taking them apart a little bit. They really clamped down in the second half, especially with that secondary behind them. But I think they're going to have some pressure, especially in the first half, to come out against you guys and try to get some pressure in the backfield and make Carson's life a little bit harder.
So speaking of secondary, the Eagles finally have a great cornerback. We have Darius Slay, who held Scary Terry to only 2 receptions for 30 yards. But you guys have Jalen Ramsey, who body slammed Amari Cooper. So thank you for that first.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be a game of who's a better corner at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You guys will be covering the likes of Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Reagor. That's really all of our. You're not gonna put Ramsey on Goddard or Ertz, but I mean Darius Slay has to deal with most likely Cooper Kupp over Robert Woods. Right. In your opinion, you guys just signed Ramsey to this lucrative deal. Is Ramsey a bit overpaid?
Well, I mean, the answer is yeah, but the thing is, and this is part of the problem in the NFL, is you can't really overpay a guy because once you pay him something, that's what he's worth to your team, right? And we dealt with this when it was with Sammy Watkins, and you had Rams fans looking at the market and saying, okay, I could give up $9 or $10 million for him, and Kansas City comes out and gives him $14 million a year. It's like, whoa, they overpaid him. There's no way we're going to keep him for that. Well, guess what? That's how much he's worth to Kansas City. So, team. It only takes one team. It might be overpaying for you, but it's not overpaying for them, if it makes sense, right? So the good thing about Jalen Ramsey is you're not paying him. We dealt with this with Sam Bradford under the old CBA, where you're paying a guy on potential, right? You're paying a guy hoping that he ends up
both teams,
right? Exactly. And we dealt with it on our side before we handed him off to you guys, where you're paying him before he's actually done it. Jalen Ramsey's NFL resume is good enough to get paid for, the same way Cooper Kupp's did. So I don't necessarily feel bad about the amount of money that we gave him. It's just that to give 2 firsts and a 4th just to chase him a year early in free agency, that's what kind of stings. But in terms of the money, as long as he stays healthy, he's definitely worth it. And if the Rams make a playoff push and he makes a play, the cost of what it took to get him on board is going to be nothing that Rams fans are upset about. And I'm sure if anything, it's going to be something the front office is pointing to, saying, look, we got this guy and he's maybe the best young corner in the game. And that's part of the reason we're in the playoffs again.
Now, speaking of corners, our new corner, Nickel Roby-Coleman, said an interesting thing about Carson Wentz. Back a few weeks ago, he was on a Zoom call. I saw. Said Carson Wentz commands the huddle outside of Jared Goff when they asked to compare the two. What's going on? What's going on there?
Well, I love Nickel Roby-Coleman, man. He's one guy that I wish had a mic more often. He's got fantastic quotables. Really, really cool dude. And given his size, he's somebody that's, you get these feisty, tinier corners that always have a chip on their shoulder because they're never going to match up with size for guys. Yeah. And NRC is one of those dudes, man. And he's so fun. He's really good at his job. I don't, the quote itself, whatever. I mean, you got it. What are you going to say? Come to Philly and say, yeah, no, Goff's better than Carson Wentz. you're not gonna play. You're not gonna make the team. So it's one of those things. I get it, and be good for NRC. I think you guys are going to be excited to have him over the course of the year. He's a really good slot corner, and despite his size, he plays bigger than he is, and that's an affirmation to what he does in his skill.
He looks phenomenal on Sunday. Karen's hands down, he's probably one of our favorite additions to the team this offseason. But speaking of the two quarterbacks, let's go back to 2016. You guys had the first pick. We had the second pick. Are you still taking Jared Goff over Carson Wentz at this point in their careers?
You know what's funny is every time I talk to somebody from the Eagles or somebody from the Cowboys, it's always Dak versus Goff. And every time I talk to the Eagles, it's Carson versus Goff. It's like, man, there's never this weird – we never get the triad together for everybody to talk. And we can just point at the Bears. We can point at the Bears and go, Mitchell Trubisky, man.
you know what? Next time, just for you, Joe, I'm gonna get this going. I'm gonna get you on. I'm gonna get a Cowboys writer on.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get a Bears writer on.
Oh, that's
and we're just gonna have a 5-minute.
Really mean that's like a 4-on-1.
We're just gonna laugh.
Poor Mitch. Poor Mitch. He did have a nice fourth quarter. I was glad to see that for Bears fans. No, I mean, here's what I'd say about Jared Goff was coming out of 2018, and obviously the Super Bowl was clearly not his greatest performance, but the trajectory that he had coming out of that season was so fantastic. He was great late in the NFC Championship. He had a really, really good season, and given how young he was, it was like, man, we're finally getting the idea that, no, this guy is worth the number one pick, what we traded up to get him, perfect for the city, perfect for the culture, perfect for the franchise, all that kind of stuff. And then last year happened, right? And it was a regression year, and that stuff happens. I think the good thing is when you got a regression year like his and you put up those numbers, it's like, okay, if that's what a regression year looks like, I'm fine with it. But you got to make sure that A, that looks like a regression year, which means you got to bounce back this year, and B, you can't have too many regression years or regression weeks. We got to make sure we don't have a ton of those. So, look, Carson Wentz is really talented. I can understand why Eagles fans are all behind him, and as long as he stays healthy, I'm sure you guys are going to be willing to ride him all the way towards December and hopefully into the playoffs. But I don't know a lot of Rams fans that are willing to play the game where I'd rather have guy X than go. Well, okay, we'd rather have like Pat Mahomes or Lamar Jackson.
Everybody would.
I don't know those guys. If you're talking about like the guys from 2016, whether it's Wentz or Dak or some of the other guys in that next tier below the top tier guys, I think most Rams fans are still behind Jared Goff. And it's one of the things that's tough for him, and it's just weird that this is the era he lives in, is we're getting to an era in the NFL where guys are creating so many plays off script. Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, even now with guys like a Baker Mayfield, or if you saw Brock Purdy at Iowa State, or some of these guys coming out of college, where you've got guys that are, okay, when the play breaks down, they can move with their feet and create stuff after the script. Jared Goff cannot do that. He's like a 1 out of 10 in that kind of stuff. But if you give him the right script, he can be very efficient at picking apart defenses. And the Cowboys saw that this week, right? As long as the system is good, and that was part of the deal with that moniker, the system QB, was it suggested that maybe he's not good enough individually. I don't think that's the case. I think most quarterbacks, especially pocket quarterbacks, are system QBs. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. The thing is, those guys are just so good at running their systems and eventually so smart and wise at avoiding the risks that they end up at the end of the season making a ton of great plays managing that system. Hopefully, I'm not saying Jared Goff needs to get on Peyton Manning, Tom Brady's level, but you want to get on the level of saying, yeah, this guy's a system QB, but he runs our system maybe better than anybody else could, and that you would rather go with that than having the grass be greener and risking for something else.
Sure, very good point.
Now, one thing we can all agree on in 2016 is thank the Lord we do not have Paxton Lynch or Christian Hackenberg.
Sure.
Are they even in the league anymore?
I think we all – Paxton Lynch, I think, is on Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I think. Or maybe he was released, and I think Elliot Shore Parks was like, oh, let's take him. Because Elliot Shore Parks, a Philly reporter, is known for his hot, quote-unquote, hot takes. He was on board with Paxton Lynch over Wentz, and he still, to this day, was like, yeah. But anyways, so very, very – this is near and dear to my heart to ask you this question. What's the beer like over there in on the west side?
Yeah, so here's the thing. Here's the great thing is the beer scene on the Pacific Coast is fantastic, all the way from Washington all the way to San Diego. Here's the plot twist. I'm from Dallas, Texas, man. So that's the thing, right? I'm a Rams fan who grew up in Dallas, Texas, which, by the way, I was 1 out of 1 my entire life until we got to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and I go to the grocery store and I see people wearing Rams stuff. It's like, whoa, man, where the hell have y'all been for the last 30 years? What?
Of course.
So, yeah, no, I was born in Los Angeles, but we moved out to Dallas when I was real young. Not the funnest time in the mid-'90s to be a Rams fan, surrounded by Cowboys fans, but all my boys growing up were Cowboys fans, everybody else. I will say this, the Dallas, Texas beer scene has gotten much better in the last 10 years. Obviously, 2020 has set that back for a lot of the smaller breweries in the area, and that really sucks because they got some really good ones, even up into Oklahoma and Arkansas. But, yeah, we'll have to see how that entire industry rebounds moving forward because you had a lot of really good craft breweries, but I'm definitely not talking any smack on the West Coast. They got a great beer scene. San Diego, LA, NorCal, Portland. I mean, come on, man, it's Portland.
I say that because on two fronts. Ballast Point is probably my favorite brewery, and they're out there in San Diego.
They're fantastic.
Ballast Point Sculpin IPA is my favorite.
Very good.
IPA. They're great. They're grapefruit. They're habanero. I haven't had their habanero in so long. They're pineapple. They're unfiltered. You name them. I love them. Also, we're sponsored today by Tavour, the craft beer delivery service. It's an app, Tavour, Tavour. They send you notifications, and they say, "Oh, hey, here's what we have," and you put them in your cart. They're reserved for you. They send them to your house. Boom, done. And those of you out there who are interested, FTB 10 $10 off, $25 after you spend $25, $10 off. And if those of you who know craft beer, you know $25 is nothing when buying craft beer because they can be very expensive. $25 can be one bottle of a really rare beer if you're really into it. But use our code FTB10. Go to Dallas. I visited Fort Worth a few years ago, and that barbecue was very fantastic.
We were in Frisco.
Yeah, Fort Worth. The thing about Texas that, and it's one of those things I think most people know, is it's just so big that, you know, whether you compare West Texas, like in El Paso, to North Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth, to the Hill Country, those are 3 different places. I know it's technically in the same state, but those are practically 3 different countries, man.
Listen, you're talking to 2 guys who live in New Jersey.
Yeah.
North Jersey, Central Jersey, and South Jersey could not be more different.
I know, and that was the thing, was when I got out of the Army. I got out of the Army and moved up to Washington, D.C. in 2011.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks, man. And so as I would travel to East Coast, I would be like, why are all these states so small, man? Like, you can get through a state in an hour. Like, what? That's crazy.
You know,
so when we would drive up to D.C. to New York and hit, you know, Baltimore and Philly and hit Jersey, it was like, man, you can get through these states easy. Texas, it's going to take you a day and a half.
The scenery is better, a lot better in Texas as well.
You could always take a day trip from up here, like where I live, down to Jersey Shore. It's 2 hours, and then you come back home. It's
unbelievable.
It's great. I mean, New York, you know, New York's a little bigger. You know, in upstate New York, from where I used to live right outside the city in New York City. To go upstate to like Albany and up there, even more Syracuse, is like 3 hours, 4 hours, but still, that's, you know, you can make that's a little bit of a day trip if you wanted to. Nothing like Texas. Like because I remember going to Fort Worth. It was actually on a layover we were coming from Cabo back home, and I was like, you know what? Let me see where this. I forget what the town was, and let me see where this is because I was looking for a brewery. And the thing was across the map. I was like, never mind. I'm not going there.
Yeah, my wife's from El Paso. I live in Dallas. And if you're lucky, you can get there in under 12 hours.
Oh. Wow, that's wild.
I've only done that. I've done the drive a few times. I've driven from here to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And that's about 10 or 11 hour drive.
Yeah. It's not my thing.
Brian likes to stay home.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm local. I mean, I hate driving far. I take the airplane. But we got to know, Joe, what is your prediction for Sunday? And as well, what are your keys to a Rams victory over the Eagles on Sunday?
And your matchup to watch. Also.
Yes, those are good. Okay, so I'll do all this. Let's start with the matchup to watch. I think the first matchup to watch is going to be the Rams offensive line against the defensive line. Now, we mentioned the condensed game plan that they had. I think part of it was to make things easier for Jared Goff getting the season started and working in some of the newer targets that they had. We got Gerald Everett back. He was injured at the end of last year. We got the new rookie Van Jefferson I mentioned out of Florida, new running back Cam Akers out of Florida State. And so one of the things I thought was just to make it easy on everybody, but it was also because the offensive line struggled so much last year, went through a bunch of injuries just like you guys are going through, and it's just really hard to deal with those. The best thing you can do is take a lot of responsibility off their shoulders. I don't know how consistent he's going to be with that. I think there's going to be opportunities for him to say, look, we're going to need you guys to step up some games and give Goff some time to look downfield and at least to give the variety so that when you look on tape, you don't know, okay, the Rams are an 8-yard offense regardless of what they're looking to do. And so I think it's going to be interesting. I don't really necessarily have a prediction of what they're going to do there, but I'm interested to see how they do it. One of the things that we started doing for the first time under McVay late last year was going to 12 personnel with one running back, 2 tight ends, primarily Johnny Munt, who is one of those guys where he's that old school football player where he's not he can't run, he
His
can't
name
catch.
Sounds like it.
But good name. We call him All-American Johnny Munt. We do it like the old Captain America, those newsreels. Johnny Munt, newsreel, 1946, like one of those things, right?
Yeah.
But because he's not really good at football. He almost quit football to go back to be a farmer in Oregon before his career started. But that's the kind of guy that's, if you want a blocking tight end that's not good at anything else, he's going to give you everything he's got at that position. And when we plugged him in last year, he was good enough at it to help the offensive line, and especially in a post-Todd Gurley running scheme. That was really valuable to take some responsibility off of those offensive linemen and give a little bit more variety. And we saw some of that against the Dallas Cowboys, not a ton. I think it was less than 25%. Most of our work was in 11 personnel, just one tight end, usually Tyler Higbee. So I'll be eager to see if that happens. That'd be my number one matchup is the offensive line. If we're doing keys to the game, I think the wrinkle to the offensive line is the first key is the running game. We had Todd Gurley, for whatever was going on, whether the knee was already shot or whether they were scared that it could get affected with too many carries, they spent 2.5 months with one hand tied behind their back, not willing to run the ball a ton. And so week one, now that Gurley's not there and you've got this running back by committee of Malcolm Brown, who's now in his 6th year, really, really heavy plotting, short yardage specialist, did a great job setting up 3rd and short. And the first 10 3rd and short, we had 3rd and 6 10 times against the Cowboys to start the game. We were 8 of 10 on 3rd downs. The game plan worked fantastically. And that was his job, right? Take a 2-yard gain and turn it into a 4-yard, 5-yard gain, set up 3rd and short and convert it, and it worked perfectly. That's his game. Cam Akers is more athletic, works in space, great elusiveness, doesn't necessarily need the best blocks to set that stuff up because he's got so much jukes. And then Darrell Henderson's kind of the home run hitter. Interesting group, but they have one game of experience between the 3 of them. But McVay ran them 35 times. That was the most handoffs to running backs that we've had in more than a year. We didn't have that many in all of 2019 with Gurley. So in terms of quantity, if McVay wants to, clearly he's going to be able to run the ball. That wasn't an option last year. And so depending on how and when he wants to deploy that, we saw it in week 1. I don't know if we'll get it in week 2, but how the running game develops, that'd probably be my first key. I think the second key we talked about is the Rams front 7. Given the injuries that you guys are dealing with and Lane Johnson coming back and some of that rotation, some of the stuff you're dealing with, we saw it with the Cowboys. They lost Lyle Collins before the game at right tackle. And they put in, Frederick. But Biotish is a really nice rookie center, and he played pretty well in reserve.
Courtesy of the Eagles trade.
I know, and I love Wisconsin linemen. They're always fantastic. But they plugged in at right tackle this undrafted free agent rookie, Terrence Steele out of Texas Tech, and he struggled. I mean, it's a undrafted free agent rookie in week 1. I don't think Cowboys fans were expecting him to be Pro Bowl caliber, but he had his hands full, and the Rams were giving it to him, especially 4th quarter. They were starting to overload on that side, and he was struggling. So it's one of those things where when we're looking at you guys, and you guys are 2 offensive linemen down, and the 3rd one's just coming back, Washington having the game they had, the Rams got to get pressure, and they got to figure out ways to do it without committing too much to the blitz. That was one thing that Wade Phillips was always real, what's the right word? I guess aggressive with, was he didn't mind throwing blitz packages together first quarter. Like, oh, my first pass rush didn't work, screw it. We're sending 6. And it's like, okay, well, now you're leaving all this space underneath on 3rd and 5, and that's going to be a little too easy for some of the more experienced quarterbacks, guys like Dak Prescott, like Carson Wentz, that know how to deal with those looks. So that offensive line battle for you guys, I know, Chris, you're waving it off, but we'll see. It's one.
If you saw last game, Carson.
But that was the thing. Was last game he was
waiting.
Yeah. Got to figure out how to. I mean, that's one of the things with Wentz. And who was it? I think Dan Orlovsky was pointing it out that he's just got to process stuff faster and either get rid of the ball.
Just be decisive. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, Yeah, if you got that much pressure, you can't just sit there and wait. Bad things happen. And so for the Rams, that's the point. They got to make bad things happen, and this is an opportunity for do that. I think the third would be kind of what we talked about early on with what you were miffed at from 2017 or 2018 is this is McVay against Peterson. These are two coaches that are revered around the league for what they've been able to do to this point in their careers, and given what McVay did last week and what Peterson has done in recent years, there's reason to think that these are two of the better coaches, and they get a chance to go against one another in some new look depth charts. Certainly the Rams' defensive side, but obviously McVay doesn't have as much input there as he does on the offensive side. But the Rams have three new coordinators: new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, new special teams coordinator. McVay's holding the glue on these guys to keep them all together, and it worked last week. But they're going to get tested more than they were last week over the course of the season. And certainly when you've got teams that are going to be more aggressive because, and this isn't you guys, but as we go through our season and we find some teams that have less talent than you guys, than the Cowboys did, they're going to be more aggressive and challenging maybe Jalen Ramsey more than the Cowboys did. Because the Cowboys, you got CeeDee Lamb, you got Michael Gallup, you got Amari Cooper. You don't have to go at Jalen Ramsey. When you face these teams that maybe have one really good wide receiver and then a bunch of kind of just guys that are there, you could maybe avoid Jalen Ramsey and try to pick on Darius Williams or try to pick on Troy Hill or try to pick on Jordan Fuller, a 6th-round rookie we got out of Ohio
Jordan
State.
Fuller, by the way. I want to point that
out of nowhere. What a surprise start. He was fantastic last week. He was really, really good. Made a huge play on the 4th and 3 that Mike McCarthy decided to go for it, scraped behind the defense and made a tackle and got the Rams off the field, turnover on downs. And obviously Cowboys fans were livid that they didn't try to kick the field goal and tie the game, but give credit to a 6th-round rookie for making a play on 4th down. I think that's the kind of thing where you got a coaching staff that on the Rams side that feels really good, really young, really inexperienced coaching staff. All three of these guys are under 40. All of them have that kind of Sean McVay pedigree of skyrocketing through the ranks of the NFL and maybe jumping too fast up the ladder. But for a guy like McVay, it's worked. If that continues to be the case for these guys, I think Rams fans are going to be really excited about this coaching staff. But let's be honest, Doug Peterson's obviously not a bottom half of the NFL coach himself. And I think that coaching matchup is going to be maybe the third key, especially when you talk about adjustments. We saw it last week. The Rams defense came out, looked very different than the first half. They gave up 3 points in the second half to the Cowboys. It's just fantastic from the coaching staff. So those would be my three, would just be how the running game works, what we're seeing against the coaches, and then if we're able to get that pressure on y'all's front seven. Prediction-wise, I hate predictions because it's the NFL. I don't bet on sports, man. I hate predictions because you go –
I don't even know what will kill me.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like you'd be like, yeah, no, I feel comfortable betting on sports, and then you get these ridiculous games. You get Washington beating you. I wouldn't have bet on that happening. Come on, especially not without the line. So it's one of those things where the NFL, there's so much parity and stuff happens week to week that you're like, how did this? We got whooped by the Cowboys last year, week 15. Fast forward to week 1, and we
Miami versus Philly last year.
Yeah, I mean, it happens, man. That's the NFL. That's what makes the NFL so fun, right? Is that sometimes you're the Miami, sometimes you're the Philly in that game. So I'll say prediction-wise, I'd like to see a little bit more aggression from the Rams. I get it. It was condensed for a reason. They were worried about the Dallas defensive front. Now, Aldon Smith actually had a lot of success coming back for them in week 1. Cool story. And, hope that guy's got his life figured out, because if he does, that's a cool redemption story for him. But he was messing with us, and the offensive line from 2019 for the Rams just didn't play well. But with our tools, you gotta push the ball sometimes, more so than we did last week. Dallas maybe made it a little bit easier for us because we were so successful on those 3rd and shorts. But if you guys come out and you're a little bit stouter on 3rd and short and force us off the field and we have to open things up, I think that's where the adjustments in the second half are going to make a bigger difference. So I'll go with a tighter Rams win, maybe something like 3 points. I will say this, I didn't give a key to the game. Our kicker, we had Greg Zuerlein for 8 years, and then we did the grass is great. He missed one big kick. He missed the kick in week 5 against Seattle, and Rams fans were like, that's it. The 8 years doesn't – it's one of those things, and I don't get it why we do it for kickers. Jared Goff can miss 10 throws, and the entire Rams fan base is like, he'll get him next time. The kicker misses one kick, and you're like, nope, never again. He kicked us to the Super Bowl, man. He made the kick at the end of regulation and in overtime.
I wish we knew what that was like, because Carson Wentz can miss one throw.
Yeah.
And people are clamoring for Jalen Hurts to come on the field.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It's crazy. But let me just say, I hated, and then, parentheses, jealous of the Kevin O'Connell hire by you guys, because I really liked him. He was one of my top choices to to be the Eagles offensive coordinator, and I think anyone who leaves the Redskins coaching staff, they tend to really be really good outside of it. But I was really impressive. Now impressed with that hire. Now before we let you go, if there was one player outside of Carson Wentz, because we know it begins and ends with the quarterback.
Sure.
If there was one player on the Eagles offense that the Rams need to stop to win the game, who is that player? Miles Sanders is probably going to be out. Just Miles Sanders is probably going to be out.
Oh no, it's a decent hope.
Sure.
Doug Peterson's day to day means week to week. Week to week means out for the season. Like it's just it's just Doug Peterson.
Yeah, if I had to pick one, I'd probably go with Zach Ertz, right? We talked about the linebackers being soft, and that was where the Cowboys attacked. They worked the middle of the field, and losing Blake Jarwin in week 1 probably hurt them a lot. That was I know we talked about Leighton Vander Esch and obviously what was going on at right tackle, but that Blake Jarwin injury really hurt them because that's the softest part of the Rams defense is right in the middle. And so I'd probably go with Zach Ertz. I mean, depending on how you guys want to use him this week, I don't know if you want to use him there to really work the middle or send the wide receivers in there and have Ertz getting attention from the outside because you had some cornerbacks guarding some tight ends in week 1. And like I mentioned, new defensive coordinator. We don't know a ton of his tendencies. He's from the Vic Fangio tree, but, when you get those things, it doesn't mean that his defense is going to be a copycat of the Vic Fangio defense. So we're still kind of figuring out what those assignments are going to be versus Wade Phillips, where he would say, cornerback 1, you're over here. Cornerback 2, you stay over here, and you're staying there all game, no matter who's on the other side. That's how this works. We're going to have to see what it means for Brandon Staley. So I'd go with Zach Ertz. That I would be worried, especially if this gets to be one of those field possession games, and we're talking about third downs again. That's the guy that I worry about most for 3rd and 5 for you guys. And Dallas Goedert too, but I'd go with Ertz first, and I worry about our ability to stick with him and keep you guys from converting some of those third downs. I could find that to be a big difference in the game.
Okay, got to stop Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. Like both.
Cooper Kupp is the main guy that we had to stop.
Both of them because
the kid is phenomenal.
Because I feel like no matter what week it is, no matter how motivated Fletcher Cox decides to be, the run defense is going to be there on the line. Because no matter who is there, I know the Redskins. Oh, sorry, I keep saying that. The Washington football team, ran for 80 yards, but they ran 2.2 yards per carry. If they cut the Rams down to that number, you don't have Gurley anymore. I know he wasn't really a factor for a long time, but they do that, make Goff's offense, make McVay's offense one-dimensional, then they have a chance. Because
so what's your score prediction?
I know I gave a score prediction against the Washington team. It was almost there.
Yeah, you were almost there.
I was almost there because I predicted 24-17, and they were up 17-0, and then. I think it's another low scoring game. I think it's about like a 21-17 game, and I think the Eagles win.
I think it's gonna be tight, like Joe said, but I think the Eagles squeeze it out 24-20, and I think it's the reason behind it is like you mentioned, Joe. You don't know what to expect in this game because now you guys have to show up for your defensive line. Like it's a must because Washington trampled us completely.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, Doug Peterson is great at adjusting from game to game.
Yep.
And Doug Peterson
was great at adjusting halftime too. But
but let's not talk about that. Let's not get me angry again. He's good adjusting from game to game. And Carson Wentz, you've never really seen him have that atrocious of a game,
right?
And followed by a terrible game again. So I truly believe the offense gets on pace. I feel like the offensive line is gonna hold up, and if Miles Sanders is playing, it's definitely an Eagles win. I can't see the Eagles.
I went to seek revenge for his injury.
Oh, he has to be, yes.
And Lane Johnson's 100% coming back this week?
He said in an interview today that he's definitely
playing. Gotcha.
But the key is Miles Sanders, though, because we need a run game. If we don't have a run game, then it's gonna be Sunday all over again, and I might have a heart attack.
But we'll see.
I didn't mention it, but one thing that's going to be interesting for you guys to see if the run game's that key is the Rams adjusting some of their safety looks. This is something we talked about on our side, and obviously we went with Jordan Fuller last week. Taylor Rapp barely played. That's a guy out of Washington who had a really good rookie season last year that a lot of Rams fans expected to see on the field, and maybe seeing more of him instead of Kenny Young this week because Micah Kaiser is that downhill thumper. for the Mike position, not the Mo in our 3-4. The Mo's more of the athletic guy. It used to be Alec Ogletree, who y'all know because he went to the Giants.
Mhm.
And then it was Corey Littleton, who we lost in free agency this year to the Raiders. So that spot was where Kenny Young went, and that's a real deficiency against the run. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we add some safety looks to get 3 safeties on the field if y'all are looking to expand the run game, if it starts working especially.
Yeah, I mean, if the run game starts working, and then we have the deep threats of Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Reagor. Like, we do have speed, and it was proven in week 1. The only issue at hand is that you can't run play action with no run game. You can't fool a defense that knows you're not going to run the ball. So that's what I'm saying.
It's like, hey, we're pretending to do this, even though we haven't been doing this.
Just fall for it.
That was what we did last year. That was what the Rams did last year, right? We weren't running the ball, and so the play action was much less sincere. So, yeah, I mean, that's the good thing about the Rams getting it going this year is now that, and we saw it against the Cowboys, that they established it. It was much more sincere. I wouldn't be surprised if y'all come out and start smashing us in the mouth to make sure that you establish the run. Yeah,
but it's great to start fast, but we got to have the killer instinct against, a team as creative as the Rams at the end of the day. We didn't have that this Sunday. You guys, like I said, the main person that does scare me is going to be Cooper Kupp because I feel like he could turn it on at any point. I've been watching that kid since his rookie season, and I love the way he's nice. Yeah, he plays tremendous. Like, the kid's a great route runner. He has great hands, and he can take over a game like this. So it's either the Miles Sanders show or the Cooper Kupp show. One of those 2 players are going to be the key to their team's winning.
There you go.
In my opinion. I think it's going to be 24-20 Eagles if Miles Sanders plays.
Well, hopefully it is a fun game. That's all we can ask for, a competitive game. If it starts being a beatdown by the Rams, I might be a little drunk.
So start of the season 0-2, I might lose my mind. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, we'll see. I thoroughly believe they cannot be an 0-2 team going into a much improved Cincinnati Bengals team. They are the perfect trap game team.
Who do y'all have after Cincinnati?
The Niners.
Yeah, so that's a trap game. That's it.
And then the Steelers. And then the Bengals. I'm sorry. And then the Ravens.
Yeah.
So and then we get a little break with the Giants.
It's a tough damn schedule.
But it's a little rough. Later in the season, they do have a stretch of Seattle, Green Bay, and New Orleans. So it's this year
NFL hates Philly.
Very, very chaotic.
That's tough.
That's all it is.
It's tough.
But at least they don't have their 3 straight road games like they did last year.
Right.
No, that's I guess.
But y'all won the division, so you got to play the division winners. That's one of the good things that the Rams got. We slid down to 3rd in the division last year, so our schedule looks way better than it has the last 2 years.
Yeah, I don't mind if we slide this year and then have a better schedule next year.
Right.
A healthier team too. Wouldn't mind that at all. But Joe, thanks for joining us today, man. It was a great pleasure to have you on. He's scaring me.
You should say "Go Birds." I thought that's your sign off now.
No, you know what it is. Like, I want to say the Eagles are going to beat the Rams, but I'm worried. I'm not going to lie. I'm a bit worried.
I messed Brian up before with me saying
he did. He completely threw me off. I'll edit it out so nobody will witness it except for Joe. That's Joe's parting gift.
There you go.
He witnessed that.
So so everybody heard before that about Joe's ats and that's so we're not going to say that again.
There you go. Yeah, hopefully it's a good game, no injuries, and hell, let's do this again maybe in the playoffs.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Sounds good.
There you go.
NFC Championship. See you there.
Let's do it.
All right, Joe. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Brian Cameron. He's Chris Infante. We're flipping the birds. And until next week.
Oh, I just jumped you again. Whatever.
What's going on with you today?
I'm tired, man.
Anyways, go birds.